So there we have it. Game of Thrones is finally finished. They were given an hour and 12 minutes to wrap up in this episode, but can they do it? Obviously this is going to be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the episode, come back afterwards. One thing I will say before I get into my review is this is not the end this show deserves. This has been one of the best TV shows on TV for a long time, and it's possibly my favourite ever. And this last season has not been up to scratch. It's not been the same quality writing we've had. It's not been the same anything. I do think the cinematography and other things about it have really stood out, but in terms of writing, the show's taken a nosedive, and this isn't the ending it deserves. I'm going to try and look at this episode by itself rather than a wrap-up of the show, and I'll take a look at that at the end, but how did the actual episode stand up? We start the episode 4 minutes in with no dialogue. They're covered in ash, no cheering, is clearly not a victory. Perfect way to start the episode in my opinion. We then get Jon walking up to Grey Worm, who's about to kill a handful of Lannister guards. Jon tries to stop him, there's a little showdown, nothing really happens, and Grey Worm slaughters the guards. He continues being the character he's been. The last few seasons I haven't been a fan of his at all. I don't find him an interesting character anymore. He just seems like kill, kill, kill. I've lost Missandei. Not a fan. Not a fan of the character. Not a fan of the moments he has in this episode. But let's move on to Tyrion finding Jaime and Cersei. Now for me this was an emotional part. It was acted perfectly. This is what the episode needed more of. Speaking of that, we get an epic shot of Dany with the dragon spreading its wings behind her. I think it's sort of symbolising her turning into a monster, sort of only knows destruction, maybe the devil. There's a few things you could draw to it. But this was a really cool moment, and it was a really cool shot in an episode that spent a lot of time talking and characters walking places, so this was really interesting. We then get a scene of Dany addressing the Unsullied and Dothraki. She speaks, smiles, showing zero remorse for what she did. If she was a more likeable character, for example, if this was Jon, this would be an incredible scene. It's set up perfectly. The armies, the banner draping, the dragon. Just a really cool moment. It's shame it's for Daenerys. She goes on about freeing people from a tyrant. She was the only tyrant. Well, I guess Cersei was as well, to be fair. So sort of true, but then she goes on to say about liberating people, which I guess means killing them. Liberating them from life, I guess. But then finally, this is what I wanted more in the episode. Someone to stand up to Dany and say what she's doing is wrong. And we get that from Tyrion. He's then immediately put into jail, so we're not going to see much more of that, but somebody has finally done it. And for me, there's so many times in this episode where I'm screaming for someone to kill Dany or Grey Worm. I just want them gone. Another spoiler alert, I guess. Only one of them dies. We then get Jon and Tyrion speaking, and we get the love is the death of duty, which is the perfect line to sum up this last season. But Tyrion flips it on Jon and says duty is the death of love, hinting that he has to kill Daenerys. Really cool moment, really cool way to tie in this line that was so important earlier in this show. So obviously we then get the Dany and Jon scene. We do get a little moment with Drogon outside where it seems like, I don't know if Drogon knew what was going to happen or he just trusts Jon, which is probably why he doesn't kill him. But this is a cool moment that leads into one of my favourite of the episode. You feel the two characters connect, you almost feel like it's going to work out. I don't think anyone genuinely thought it would. Obviously then Jon kills Daenerys as they're embracing, and that is the end of her. The most quick and simple kill. It was a moment that had to happen, but I don't know. I feel like this episode, more than anything, it quells my rage of the last episode. I accept this. I wouldn't say I enjoy it or I think it's done well. It just sort of smooths off the edges of the last episode. But all in all, this season has been a massive down. I've seen petitions and things of people wanting it to be refilmed, which I think is a little insane because it's not going to happen, not because it's a good season. I wish it could happen, but it's just not going to. We then get Drogon turn up, and there is sort of things in histories of dragons changing owners between Targaryens, so at no point was I worried for Jon. I didn't think he would die that way. We do get a really touching scene of Drogon sort of nudging Dany, sort of reminiscent of Lion King and Simba. So I did really like that. I'm a massive fan of Lion King, so I thought that was a cool little nod. And then we just see how truly powerful this dragon is. Sort of screaming, burning things, burns the Iron Throne, which is an absolutely iconic moment, whether you don't like the episode or not. There's some brilliant moments. It's just crazy how we've got here. If you think of season 1 and this shot of the throne room, it's just so far removed. I can't believe we're at this moment, and I didn't think we'd get to it. That's not true. I knew it was going to happen, but it's just, whether you hate this last season or not, it's been one hell of a journey with this show, and it is definitely one of the best on TV, just let down by the last season. We then get this sort of council meeting of all the main houses of the realm. The comedy of Sansa's uncle standing up and suggesting he be king is just... It wasn't funny, it was cringy, I didn't like it, and it was misplaced. It shouldn't be in this moment. This should be one of the most powerful and history-defining moments in the show, and they threw that away. Obviously then Jon is sent to the wall, which is where it all began for him. It's an absolutely heartbreaking scene of him being sent. I guess it's better than dying, but it's sort of... he's almost gone nowhere in this show. He's ended up exactly where he was. And I know it's sort of about grey areas for characters, and him and Tyrion aren't sure whether what they did was right. But I feel like this is out of character for the writing. Like, in the show, it's always been emphasised it's all about life. The death it's final, it's not important, you're not judged by your death, you're judged by your life. So I feel like having Tyrion and Jon as broken characters kept alive is almost against the way other things have gone in the show. I didn't want to see him die, but it would have been a cleaner finish for them both, I think, and just fit more in sort of the feel to the show, really. For me, I don't know if anyone else hates him as much, but Grey Worm is my least favourite character alive. There's not many bad characters left, to be fair, but not a fan at all. We've got this King of Dawn, or whatever he is. I mean, he's just sat in a chair and he's slightly slumped, and I'm like, yeah, I like this character a lot more than I like Grey Worm already. Probably because he reminds me of the Red Viper, but yeah, it's just insane how much I used to love this character. When he was with Barristan Selmy, I was a massive fan, and now I just hate him. Like, I can't stand him. We then get a nice moment of Jon saying goodbye to the Starks. Arya's spin-off could actually be quite interesting of her travelling west of Westeros. This episode only manages it a couple of times, but when it does it really well, and the Jon and Arya goodbye is absolutely crushing. It brought sort of a tear to my eye, and Maisie Williams is just incredible in this scene. We then get a really sweet moment of Brienne filling in Jaime's page of all his accomplishments. As much as the character was sort of ruined in this last season, that is a really sweet moment, and it's sort of a nice way to end things for them both. The overarching problem is this was never going to end well after season 7 and the shortened season 8. There was no time to do it. So, I don't know, I'm not saying this is a good ending, I'm saying it's an acceptable one for the time we had. But there's no excuse for this scene. A Song of Ice and Fire, they've actually written the book in the show. It's almost like they've seen the theories of how this could be the worst ending, and they've tried to tack it on almost, but in a subtle way. Absolutely hate that moment. No place in the show for it. Massive thumbs down for me. And this council scene in general, I appreciate the comedy, like it is funny, but at the same time, it isn't what this scene needed. We needed a serious moment between the characters to show where the show would be going. Bronn is brilliant, as always. We didn't see enough of him. It would be nice to see him before everything went down, but I guess that's the nature of his character. We then get the sheathing scene, which is awesome, of all the Starks preparing themselves on their different journeys. And it's just incredible to see the journey Sansa has made through this show. Out of everyone, I would say she has the most character development. She's been through the most things. You can see how it's warped her and changed her. More than anyone else, I would say. So probably the most interesting character for the end for me. So I was happy to see how it worked out. The Queen in the North moment was cool, reminiscent of Rob. The Tormund and Ghost payoff was probably one of my favourite bits, as I'm sure it was for a lot of fans. The Ghost moment especially. I didn't realise he had lost an ear in the other episode, so that was really sweet. It's an interesting way of finishing the show. I've seen online the 4.7 rating it's received. I just think that's ridiculous. It's not that bad of an episode. It's not that bad of a show. At no point has it been that bad. But I did notice there was a water bottle shown. I saw some pictures of that. We've had the Starbucks cup. We've had Jaime's hand. There's been so many little bits that shouldn't have got to air. And in previous seasons, they obviously didn't because there was more care and more time spent on it. So you can see the massive fall the show's taken, but I don't think it's fallen to a 4.7. It's just fans being grumpy, and it's possibly people not fans of the show just seeing stuff online and being like, yeah, it was terrible. No way it's a 4.7. It's not by any means one of the best episodes, nowhere near. Like, this whole season will probably sit near the bottom for me. At the heart of it, it's had some incredible moments, and it's been an incredible journey of a show. It's just a shame the way it's finished. It's a bittersweet moment, but because of the writing, just because of how great the show was and how shit the ending was. I think one of my biggest gripes for me is Jon being a Targaryen meaning absolutely nothing. That it's not played into the story at all. It made Dany a little more, paranoid. But that was it. Like, he didn't vie for the throne. It didn't play into the end game. It had nothing to do with anything else. And that's what this last season has done the worst. It's not paid off prophecies. It's not paid off character build-up. It's not paid off story moments. It's not paid off a lot of things people wanted to see. And I feel like the Night King is just the epitome of that. The coolest and most interesting bad guy. Nothing came of it. Nothing came of Cersei. And then, even though Dany did have sort of a crazy episode, nothing came of her either. Thankfully, the writers of this last season aren't going to be working on the spin-off, so I can't wait to see those. I think the spin-off is focusing on the Long Night, so we might actually get some of the White Walker backstory. I will be bringing videos on when that comes out and sort of information comes out, so if you want to keep an eye on that, make sure you subscribed. Leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what you thought of it. But until next time.